Rosa Parks Johnson, a 72-year-old retired schoolteacher, woke to the gentle sound of birds outside her small house in Atlanta, feeling the kind of quiet energy that comes from a life lived with purpose. Her morning routine was simple: a cup of warm tea, a short walk through her garden, and a few pages from her favorite book of poems. She had promised her granddaughter she would bake a special apple pie for dinner, so she planned a trip to the nearby Greenfield market to buy fresh apples and a loaf of whole grain bread. Rosa enjoyed grocery shopping because it reminded her of her teaching days when she often met former students and shared warm greetings. She wore a soft blue cardigan, comfortable shoes, and a light scarf, and as she left her home she felt grateful for the bright September morning. The sun cast a gentle glow over the quiet neighborhood, and the air smelled of early autumn leaves. The market was only a short bus ride away, and Rosa always liked the ride because it gave her a chance to watch the city wake up: children walking to school, workers carrying coffee cups, neighbors sweeping porches. When she stepped off the bus, she noticed a slight chill in the breeze, but also the pleasant scent of freshly baked bread drifting from the bakery across the street. She smiled, thinking of the pie she would bake later. Inside the Greenfield market, the atmosphere was different from usual. A sudden sale had drawn a large morning crowd, and the aisles bustled with shoppers hurrying to grab deals. Rosa moved slowly but confidently, careful not to bump anyone with her small woven basket. She loved the quiet beauty of simple tasks: picking apples, checking their firmness, admiring their colors. As she reached the produce section, she greeted a young clerk who offered a friendly nod. Rosa's polite manner often brought out kindness in others, and she believed respect was a language everyone could understand. She carefully chose 6 bright red apples, the kind her granddaughter loved, and then strolled toward the bakery for a fresh loaf of bread. The smell of warm crust filled the air, and she felt a small moment of happiness at the thought of family dinner later that day. Across the store, Michelle Obama, the regional director of the Greenfield chain, entered quietly for an unannounced visit. She often visited different branches to see how employees worked when they were not expecting her, believing that true leadership meant understanding daily challenges. Dressed in a simple beige jacket and dark pants, Michelle blended with the shoppers, observing how staff interacted with customers. She took mental notes of helpful gestures and small details, hoping to support the team with improvements. Rosa did not know she was there, nor did most employees. At the front of the store, Mark Zuckerberg, the store manager, was already stressed. A delivery truck had arrived late, a computer glitch had delayed price updates, and a shortage of staff left him juggling too many tasks. His phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from suppliers. Mark prided himself on efficiency but sometimes let pressure cloud his patience. As Rosa approached the checkout line, she noticed the long queue of shoppers waiting with full carts. She did not mind the wait. Years of teaching had taught her the value of calm in crowded places. She observed the people around her: a young mother soothing a baby, an elderly man checking a shopping list, a pair of teenagers laughing softly over a bag of candy. The small moments of everyday life always warmed her heart. When it was finally her turn, Rosa placed her apples and bread on the counter and smiled at the cashier, a young employee doing her best to keep pace with the busy line. As the cashier scanned the bread, Rosa noticed the price was higher than the sign on the shelf. She leaned slightly forward and said in her gentle, clear voice, "Excuse me, dear, I believe the bread was listed at a lower price." The cashier looked uncertain and turned toward the service desk where Mark stood. Rosa waited patiently, expecting a simple correction. Mark, still distracted by his buzzing phone and the noise of the busy store, glanced quickly at Rosa without walking over. "It's the right price," he said, his tone short. Rosa remained calm and replied softly, "Would you mind checking the shelf sign? I may have misread it, but I'm sure it showed a different amount." Her words carried no anger, only the quiet insistence of someone used to fair solutions. The cashier, caught between politeness and the manager's authority, looked to Mark again. Michelle, standing a few feet away, watched carefully. She had been noting interactions all morning, and this one caught her attention. Rosa's respectful request contrasted with Mark's hurried manner. The manager rubbed his forehead, muttering about delays, and finally walked toward the register. He barely glanced at the bread before speaking sharply, "It's correct. We don't have time for this." His voice carried across the line, and a few customers turned their heads. Rosa remained composed, her hands resting lightly on the counter. "I understand you're busy," she said softly, "but I'm sure the sign said something else." Her words were still calm, but they carried the quiet strength of a lifetime of standing up for what was right. The crowd seemed to pause. Michelle stepped a little closer, her eyes thoughtful, observing both Rosa's dignity and Mark's frustration. Rosa sensed the tension around her but did not let it disturb her peace. She had taught children for decades, solved countless small conflicts, and believed patience could calm any storm. She looked at Mark with kind eyes, hoping he might take a breath and reconsider. Instead, he sighed heavily, glancing at his buzzing phone again. The sounds of the busy store rolling carts, beeping scanners, murmured conversations seemed to soften around Rosa. She stood quietly, a steady figure amid the rush, unaware that her gentle persistence was inspiring everyone nearby. Michelle watched with growing admiration, realizing she was witnessing something that revealed more about the store's culture than any report could. Customers exchanged glances, sensing the quiet strength of the elderly woman who refused to be hurried or ignored. In that simple moment, as Rosa waited with patience and dignity for a fair response, the stage was set for a turning point that no one in the store would forget. Rosa Parks Johnson stood quietly at the checkout counter, her steady hands resting on the small basket while the buzz of the crowded Greenfield market swirled around her like a restless tide, and though she felt the energy of the morning pressing close, her own heart beat with a calm rhythm that came from years of choosing patience over anger, a lesson she had carried from her decades as a schoolteacher guiding children through their own storms of learning and growing. The young cashier still looked uncertain, eyes moving nervously between Rosa and the service desk where Mark Zuckerberg, the store manager, scrolled through his phone with a frown etched across his forehead, clearly juggling tasks and tension. Mark had been wrestling with a late truck delivery, a glitch in the pricing system, and endless calls from vendors, and though he prided himself on efficiency, he allowed the stress of the day to knot inside him until it colored his tone and narrowed his attention to the smallest details, making him sharp when he most needed softness. The customers nearby sensed the tension rising like the faint rumble of a distant storm, and their conversations softened as if everyone felt the quiet importance of the moment. Rosa, unaware of how many eyes now watched, simply waited with the graceful composure of someone who had learned long ago that dignity often speaks louder than noise, her warm brown eyes fixed kindly on Mark as he finally stepped toward the counter. He moved quickly, each step showing his impatience, his phone still buzzing in his hand as he reached for the loaf of bread. "It's correct," he said without looking at her, his voice clipped and hurried as if those two words might erase the matter entirely. Rosa tilted her head slightly and offered a gentle smile, her voice soft but clear, "Sir, I believe the shelf sign said something else. Could we double-check, just to be sure?" Her question was simple, without blame or challenge, but Mark, pulled in a dozen directions and feeling the weight of the crowded morning, let out a sigh that seemed heavier than the air itself. He rubbed his forehead with one hand while the other still held his phone, and in that small gesture of frustration, the fragile line between calm and chaos began to thin. Michelle Obama, the regional director, quietly observing from only a few feet away, noticed every detail: the way Rosa's shoulders remained relaxed, the way her voice carried kindness even as she was dismissed, and the way Mark's face showed the strain of someone who had forgotten, for a moment, that leadership is measured most in times of pressure. Michelle had spent years understanding the importance of respect, and her mind sharpened as she watched the scene unfold, her own phone held loosely in her hand though she had no intention of looking away. Around them the store's sounds softened, the rhythmic beeps of scanners and the roll of carts seeming to fade under the quiet focus of dozens of shoppers who now sensed something significant was happening before their eyes. Rosa remained a steady presence, her breath even and her posture upright, waiting for a fair answer with the unspoken belief that calm truth would win. Mark glanced at the growing line of customers and felt the weight of their eyes on him. He imagined complaints about delays, worried about schedules, and let that worry turn into irritation. In a rushed motion meant to wave the matter away, he extended his hand toward the bread, but as he gestured with more force than intended, his hand brushed Rosa's shoulder and grazed her cheek, a careless movement born of frustration and distraction rather than intent, yet enough to draw a collective breath from everyone who saw it. The store fell into a hush so sudden it felt like the world had paused. A child nearby stopped mid-sentence, a cartwheel squeaked and then went still, and in that quiet Rosa lifted her chin slightly, her eyes widening not in anger but in disbelief, her dignity unshaken even as the unexpected touch startled her. She steadied herself with a small step back, the blue cardigan falling neatly around her frame as she spoke with the same calm strength she had used with countless children in her classroom years ago. "Sir," she said, her voice low and unwavering, "there is no need for that." The words carried through the silence like a gentle bell, clear and firm, and their calmness seemed to deepen the weight of what had just occurred. Michelle's eyes sharpened, a quiet fire behind them as she stepped closer, her mind already turning toward action. Mark froze, his hand dropping to his side as realization flickered across his face. He had not meant harm, yet the sight of the elderly woman standing with such quiet resolve made his chest tighten with something more powerful than stress and understanding that he had crossed a line that should never have been approached. The young cashier's lips parted in shock, her scanning hand motionless, while customers exchanged looks of surprise and disapproval. Rosa did not move further away, instead she drew a slow breath and stood taller, a picture of grace in the center of a storm she had not created. Michelle approached her gently, her voice carrying both care and authority as she asked, "Ma'am, are you all right?" Rosa gave a small nod, her eyes still fixed calmly on Mark, and replied, "I am fine, thank you." Her voice, still warm, seemed to release the tension slightly, yet the crowd remained hushed, waiting to see what would happen next. Michelle turned to Mark with a quiet firmness that filled the space between them like an unspoken command. "Please step away from the register," she said, her words measured and steady, leaving no room for debate. Mark hesitated, glancing around as if searching for escape, but the weight of the moment left him no choice. He moved back, his shoulders stiff, while Michelle gently guided Rosa toward a nearby chair meant for elderly shoppers who needed a rest. "Please sit if you wish," she offered, but Rosa shook her head with a small smile, choosing instead to remain standing, her posture unbroken. The shoppers watched in respectful silence, many of them sensing they were witnessing more than a simple dispute. As Michelle retrieved her phone, not to answer a message but to document the scene, she felt the importance of recording the details, not out of anger but out of duty to fairness and truth. Her calm presence gave strength to the employees who now gathered at a careful distance, their eyes filled with concern and curiosity. Rosa remained the center of quiet attention, her calm breathing and steady gaze showing a resilience that inspired even those who had never met her before this morning. She did not scold, she did not raise her voice, she simply waited, knowing that dignity itself could be the most powerful response. The crowd slowly found its voice again in soft whispers, yet everyone's eyes stayed on Rosa and Michelle as they stood side by side, one embodying the wisdom of age and the other the responsibility of leadership. Mark remained silent a few steps away, his earlier impatience replaced by a heavy awareness of the harm his careless motion had caused. The market, once full of ordinary sounds, now held an unspoken agreement among strangers that they had witnessed something unforgettable, a moment when grace confronted frustration and refused to yield. In that suspended time, Rosa's quiet strength became a lesson for all who watched, that even in a world rushing with noise and pressure, the calm dignity of a single person could turn a busy store into a place of reflection, reminding everyone that respect is not only expected but essential. Michelle Obama remained standing only a few feet from Rosa Parks Johnson, her calm presence giving quiet assurance to everyone in the Greenfield market as the hum of the store began to rise again in careful whispers, the sound of carts slowly moving down the aisles mixing with the soft beeps of distant scanners, yet the focus of nearly every shopper stayed fixed on the small circle near the front where dignity and responsibility now met face to face. Rosa, still steady and upright beside the counter, felt the weight of many eyes but carried it with the same quiet grace she had shown all morning, her breathing even and her gentle expression unchanged, as if years of guiding students through moments of tension had prepared her for this very scene. Michelle's voice, warm yet unmistakably firm, broke the fragile silence when she said, "Mr. Zuckerberg, please come with me," her words not loud but layered with an authority that invited no argument. Mark, the store manager, shifted uneasily, his shoulders stiff as he glanced at the line of customers who continued to watch with a mix of concern and curiosity. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, realizing that the power of excuse or explanation had already slipped away. With a slow nod, he followed Michelle toward the small conference room near the staff corridor, the sound of his shoes against the polished floor strangely loud in the lingering hush. Rosa did not move from her place, choosing instead to stand quietly while the young cashier offered a soft, almost apologetic smile. "Ma'am, are you sure you're okay?" the cashier asked in a hesitant voice. Rosa returned the smile, her eyes warm. "I am fine, dear," she said gently, "thank you for your kindness." Her words carried a calm assurance that eased the tension for those nearby, and a few customers even stepped closer to offer quiet words of support, telling Rosa how admirable her composure was, how inspiring her steadiness felt in such a charged moment. Rosa simply nodded, grateful but modest, never seeking attention. Inside the conference room, Michelle closed the door and faced Mark with the same steady expression she had used many times when guiding teams through difficult conversations. She set her phone on the table, its screen dark, and folded her hands in front of her. "Mark," she began in a voice that held both understanding and unmistakable resolve, "I observed what happened at the register. I understand that mornings like this can be stressful, but stress cannot excuse the way you addressed our customer or the careless movement that followed." Mark lowered his gaze, the lines of frustration around his mouth slowly softening as he realized the gravity of what had unfolded. "It wasn't intentional," he said quietly, "I was just overwhelmed." Michelle nodded slightly, acknowledging his words but keeping her focus. "Intent matters, but impact matters more," she replied. "Our responsibility is to create a place where every person is treated with care, no matter the rush or pressure. Today we did not meet that standard, and as the leader of this store, you are accountable." Mark sat down, his shoulders slumping as the weight of her words settled over him like a heavy coat. He thought of the employees who looked to him for guidance, of the customers who expected respect, and of the quiet strength of the woman he had hurried past. Michelle continued, her tone steady but not harsh. Because this is a serious breach of our values, I am relieving you of your duties effective immediately. You will receive formal notice from Human Resources and appropriate support for the transition, but leadership here requires a level of respect and composure that cannot be compromised. Mark nodded slowly, a mixture of regret and relief passing over his face as if he had long known that his impatience had been building toward a moment of reckoning. Michelle then called for the assistant managers and department leads to join the meeting. When they entered, their eyes reflected both surprise and worry. She explained calmly what she had witnessed and asked each person to speak honestly about the culture of the store. Some shared concerns about communication breakdowns and the pressure they felt during busy times, admitting that they sometimes allowed stress to shape their words. Michelle listened carefully, acknowledging their challenges but making it clear that kindness must remain the foundation of their work. We cannot build success on quick tempers or careless gestures, she said. If we forget the humanity of those we serve, we forget the very reason we are here. Her words carried a quiet power that silenced the room. After a thoughtful discussion, Michelle made the difficult decision to release the entire management team, explaining that the culture had to be rebuilt from the ground up. This is not punishment alone, she clarified, but an opportunity for renewal. Our customers deserve better, and our employees deserve leaders who lift them rather than burden them. Though the decision shocked many, her steady presence left little doubt that it was both fair and necessary. She outlined plans for transitional pay and resources for those leaving, balancing firmness with compassion. By the time the meeting ended, even those facing departure sensed the integrity behind her actions. Meanwhile, in the front of the store, Rosa remained a beacon of calm. Several shoppers approached her with kind words, and a young mother with a small child offered her a seat and a bottle of water, which Rosa accepted with a grateful nod. The cashier quietly adjusted the price of the bread to match the shelf sign, an action that brought a small, almost unnoticed smile to Rosa's face. She knew the price was never the true issue, it was the principle of fairness and the importance of respectful listening. When Michelle returned from the meeting, she walked directly to Rosa, her steps deliberate but gentle, and spoke with genuine warmth. "Ma'am, I want to thank you," she said. "Your patience and dignity reminded all of us of the standard we must keep." Rosa inclined her head slightly and replied, "I only asked for a fair check. I never wanted trouble." Michelle's eyes softened. "You did nothing wrong," she assured her. Sometimes standing calmly is the greatest example of strength. The atmosphere of the store shifted as employees absorbed the news of the management changes. What began as a tense morning now carried a sense of quiet reflection. Customers lingered a little longer, offering Rosa's smiles and small words of admiration. Even children seemed to sense that something meaningful had happened, their usual restlessness replaced by a kind of curious respect. Rosa, ever modest, simply held her small bag of apples and bread and prepared to leave, but Michelle asked if she would allow a company representative to escort her home to ensure her comfort. Rosa thanked her and declined, explaining that the short bus ride would give her time to think and to pray for everyone involved. As Rosa stepped toward the door, the cashier and several nearby shoppers offered soft farewells and even light applause, not loud or showy but filled with heartfelt appreciation for the quiet courage she had displayed. Michelle walked with her to the entrance, holding the door open as sunlight spilled across the market floor. "Thank you again," Michelle said softly. "You reminded us all of what true respect looks like." Rosa smiled, the morning light reflecting in her kind eyes. "We all need to be gentle with one another," she replied. "The world moves fast, but kindness can slow it down." With that she stepped into the bright afternoon, carrying her small bag and the quiet knowledge that her calm presence had sparked a change far greater than a simple correction of a price. The late afternoon sun streamed through the wide front windows of the Greenfield Market as Michelle Obama walked back into the main floor after her decisive meeting, her calm authority leaving a quiet ripple of change in the air that even the soft hum of refrigerators and the distant beeps of scanners could not disguise, while shoppers who had witnessed the morning's tension now sensed a new purpose moving through the store like a gentle but unstoppable tide. Employees whispered to one another in low voices, their eyes following Michelle as she crossed the floor, but there was no fear in their glances, only a thoughtful curiosity mixed with relief, as if everyone understood that something long overdue had finally taken place. Rosa Parks Johnson, still near the entrance with her small bag of apples and bread, stood gracefully among the curious crowd, her calm posture making her seem like a steady lighthouse in a shifting sea. Though she had remained patient during the long hours since the incident, her heart carried a quiet ache for the people whose jobs were now uncertain, and she whispered a silent prayer for fairness for them all, a habit from her years of guiding young minds where compassion always walked beside discipline. Michelle approached Rosa with a warm smile, her expression one of both gratitude and resolve. "Mrs. Parks Johnson," she said softly, "thank you for allowing me the time to address this properly. The management team has been released from their duties. This store will begin again with new leadership that respects every customer and every worker." Her voice was steady, never celebratory, because she understood the weight of change, how it brought hope and pain together in a single moment. Rosa nodded gently, her eyes reflecting both sadness and understanding. "I pray they find better paths," she replied in her soft, musical tone. "Sometimes an ending is the start of something kinder." Michelle felt the wisdom in those words and was reminded of why she admired elders who carried the quiet strength of experience. Nearby employees slowly gathered, some hesitant but drawn by the sense that a chapter in their workplace was turning. Michelle turned to them, addressing not only the staff but also the customers who lingered respectfully. "This store belongs to the community," she began, her voice reaching the corners of the room without a hint of harshness. "Today we faced a failure of respect, and that cannot continue. I have spoken with every manager and made the choice to remove the leadership team so we can rebuild a culture of care and dignity. I know this is difficult, but it is the right step." Her words, though firm, held a kindness that settled the nervous glances of the employees, many of whom nodded slowly as if a quiet burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Michelle promised that interim supervisors from the regional office would arrive that evening to provide support, and that every employee would keep their position and receive guidance for the transition. She explained that training sessions on empathy, communication, and stress management would begin immediately, ensuring that the market would become a place where every person, worker or shopper would be treated with patience and fairness. The crowd of shoppers responded with a soft murmur of approval, some offering small applause, others simply smiling in gratitude. Rosa watched with the eyes of a teacher who recognized a lesson well given, seeing not just the decision but the careful way Michelle honored both accountability and compassion. A young mother holding a toddler stepped forward and thanked Michelle for protecting the community's values, while an elderly man leaned on his cane and spoke about how respect must begin at the top. Their words carried a quiet power that filled the room more strongly than any cheer could have done. Michelle listened to each voice with the same attention she had shown Rosa earlier, nodding and offering gentle replies, ensuring that every person felt heard. Meanwhile, the young cashier who had first greeted Rosa approached with cautious steps, her eyes wide but hopeful. "Mrs. Parks Johnson," she said, her voice soft. "You handled everything with such grace. I've never seen anyone stay so calm." Rosa smiled warmly and placed a gentle hand on the cashier's shoulder. "Dear, calm is a choice we can always reach for," she said kindly. "When we stand steady, we help others find steady ground too." The cashier's eyes shone with quiet admiration, and she promised herself to remember those words whenever she faced a storm of her own. As the afternoon light deepened to gold, Michelle invited Rosa to walk with her through the aisles so they could speak more privately. Together they strolled past displays of fruit and shelves of grain, the air filled with the scent of ripe peaches and fresh bread. Michelle expressed her desire to honor Rosa's courage and asked if she would be willing to attend a community meeting the following week to share her perspective on kindness and resilience. "You showed everyone here what dignity looks like in real time," Michelle said. "Your presence could guide the store and perhaps the whole neighborhood towards something better." Rosa hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "If my small example can help," she replied softly, "then I will gladly share." Back near the entrance, a group of employees began posting signs announcing a special reopening event for the following weekend, a celebration of community respect and a promise of renewed service. Michelle explained that the store would close briefly the next day for staff training and structural improvements, ensuring that every corner of the market reflected the new commitment to kindness. She invited customers to return for the reopening and to take part in shaping the store's future by sharing their ideas and expectations. The shoppers who remained clapped quietly, their smiles carrying a sense of shared ownership, as if the market now belonged to them more than ever before. Rosa prepared to leave at last, her simple purchases still nestled in her small woven bag. As she moved toward the door, people stepped aside respectfully, some offering gentle words of thanks, others simply nodding in admiration. Michelle walked beside her, pausing at the threshold where the late-day sun spilled across the polished floor like a soft blessing. "Mrs. Parks Johnson," she said with sincere warmth, "you have changed more than you realize. This store will stand as a reminder of what one steady voice can do." Rosa looked out at the glowing street, the trees painted gold by the sinking sun, and answered with a quiet smile, "We all hold that power, if we stay kind and unafraid." As Rosa stepped onto the sidewalk, the evening breeze lifted the edge of her blue cardigan, carrying with it the subtle scent of apples and fresh bread. She heard behind her the gentle sounds of a community beginning to rebuild, voices of employees making plans, laughter of children chasing each other near the carts, the soft murmur of neighbors greeting neighbors. Though the day had begun with tension and a careless moment, it now ended with a sense of shared renewal, proof that patience and respect could turn even a painful incident into a story of growth. Rosa walked toward the bus stop with steady steps, her heart light but thoughtful, knowing that the true work of change had only begun and that her quiet presence had helped plant a seed of justice and support that would grow long after the market's doors closed for the night. The following Saturday arrived with a sky so clear and blue that the city itself seemed to be offering a blessing, and as morning light spilled across the streets of Atlanta, neighbors from all directions made their way toward the Greenfield Market, eager to see how the store would look after a week of quiet transformation, a week that had turned an ordinary grocery into a symbol of respect and renewal. Rosa Parks Johnson rose early in her small home, her heart carrying a gentle excitement mixed with the calm wisdom of her 72 years. She dressed in a soft cream blouse and her favorite blue cardigan, the same one she had worn on the day of the incident, not as a reminder of conflict but as a quiet sign that dignity outlasts every storm. Before leaving, she whispered a prayer for everyone who would gather, asking for unity and kindness to guide their steps. The bus ride to the market felt different this time, almost festive, with other passengers chatting about the reopening. Some recognized Rosa and greeted her warmly, thanking her for her example, while others simply smiled, sensing that she had played an important role in the change they were about to witness. When she stepped off the bus, the sidewalk in front of the market buzzed with gentle excitement. Bright banners read Community Celebration and Grand Reopening, and tables of fresh fruit and flowers lined the entrance like a cheerful welcome. Children chased bubbles blown by a local volunteer, their laughter ringing through the cool morning air, while musicians strummed soft tunes that floated like sunlight through the crowd. Rosa paused for a moment to take it all in, the simple joy of neighbors coming together after a difficult week reminding her of school picnics she used to organize for her students. She saw the young cashier from that tense morning helping arrange baskets of apples near the doorway and waved with a warm smile. The young woman hurried over, eyes shining with admiration. "Mrs. Parks Johnson, we are so happy you came," she said. "None of this would have happened without you." Rosa touched her arm lightly and replied, "Dear, it happened because many hearts were ready to listen. I only asked for fairness." Inside the market, the changes were immediately visible yet gracefully subtle. Fresh paint in warm earth tones brightened the walls, new signs carried gentle messages about respect and service, and every employee wore a badge that read "Here to help with care." Michelle Obama, standing near the bakery section, greeted customers with a calm smile, her presence both welcoming and strong. When she spotted Rosa, she moved quickly through the small crowd and embraced her with quiet warmth. "Rosa," she said, her voice filled with gratitude, "you are the reason we stand here today with a new spirit. This celebration is as much yours as anyone's." Rosa returned the embrace, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the store. "I only held steady," she replied. "The rest came from hearts willing to change." At 11 o'clock, Michelle invited everyone to gather near the front for a short ceremony. Neighbors of all ages filled the space, their faces glowing with anticipation. A small stage held a simple wooden podium decorated with sunflowers, and beside it stood a ribbon of deep green fabric ready to be cut. Michelle began the gathering with a gentle but firm voice, thanking the staff for their resilience, the customers for their patience, and the community for standing together. She spoke of the lessons learned, emphasizing that respect and care must guide every action, whether in a crowded store or a quiet home. "This market belongs to all of you," she said, "and together we will keep it a place where every person feels valued." Her words settled over the crowd like a soft melody, bringing nods and quiet smiles from those listening. Then Michelle turned to Rosa and invited her to the stage. The crowd erupted in applause that was warm rather than loud, the kind of applause that carries admiration deeper than noise. Rosa stepped forward slowly, her blue cardigan catching the light, and stood at the podium with the quiet strength that had carried her through every moment of the past week. She looked across the gathered faces and spoke in a voice both gentle and clear. "Friends," she began, "we all deserve to be treated with care, no matter our age, our work, or the color of our skin. Kindness is not something we give only when it is easy. It is a choice we make even when the day is long and the line is crowded. One small moment of patience can change a room, a store, even a whole neighborhood. I only did what any of us can do, I stayed calm and asked for fairness. The real change came because all of you chose to listen." Her words, simple and heartfelt, wrapped around the crowd like a warm embrace, and for a long moment the only sound was the quiet breath of people deeply moved. After a respectful pause, Michelle handed Rosa a pair of silver scissors. Together they cut the green ribbon while the crowd clapped with joy, children cheering as the musicians struck up a bright tune. Employees handed out slices of fresh apple pie, a tribute to the very dessert that had brought Rosa to the store in the first place, and neighbors shared stories of their own moments of quiet courage. Some spoke of standing up politely for fair treatment at work, others of helping a stranger with patience when tempers were high. Rosa listened with a full heart, feeling the shared power of everyday kindness weaving through each tale. As the celebration continued, Rosa walked through the aisles, now bustling with cheerful shoppers and helpful staff who greeted every customer with genuine warmth. She noticed small details: a new seating area for elderly visitors, wider aisles for easier movement, clear signs promising fair pricing and quick assistance. Each change spoke not only of improved service but of a deeper respect for the people who made the store a community. Employees paused to thank her personally, and even children approached to offer small hugs or shy smiles. Rosa responded to each with the same gentle grace, her heart swelling not with pride but with quiet gratitude for the goodness that had taken root. When the afternoon sun began to slant across the floor, Rosa decided it was time to return home. She stepped outside where the music still floated in the warm air and paused to watch families laughing and neighbors greeting one another like old friends. Michelle joined her at the doorway and said softly, "Because of you, this place has a new life. Your strength will guide it for years to come." Rosa looked out at the crowd, the flowers, the shining windows of the renewed market, and replied, "It was never just me. Change comes when many hearts are ready. We all did this together." Michelle smiled, understanding the truth of those words. Rosa walked to the bus stop as evening approached, carrying a small bag of fresh apples gifted by the staff and the sweet memory of apple pie waiting to be baked for her granddaughter. The golden light of sunset bathed the street, and she felt a quiet peace settle over her, knowing that a simple act of calm had blossomed into a lesson of respect for an entire community. Behind her, the Greenfield Market glowed like a beacon of new beginnings, a place forever changed by the steady courage of one gentle woman and the collective kindness of many.